Ms. Judd, it is my distinct pleasure to invite you to take your place at the lectern on the left. Thank you.
Person. Good morning. Now, I bet if you all said good morning back to me, it would be in so many languages that it would be beautiful. So why don't we have take two? Good morning. Thank you so much. Again, Mr. Chairperson, thank you. And to the President of the Economic and Social Council, Ms. Inga Rongad King, and of course to my Executive Director, Dr. Natalia, and Assistant Secretary General, Ms. Maria Francesca Spatolisano, thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, it's very good to be home. I always feel delighted and honored when I come to the United Nations. And I am home today as a messenger for the 600 million adolescent girls around the world, the largest cohort of adolescent females the world has ever seen. The 6.7 girls who will be forced into child marriage this year, their lives and their bodies ruined by the act. The 214 million around the world who still are not able to regulate their own fertility, who don't have access to modern family planning method choices. And to the 300,000 mothers who will die giving birth this year. And of course, we must also recognize that I'm here on behalf of the 27 million girls and women who are trapped in sex slavery. I'm here because of them, and I am here for them. And I'm honored to be the UNFPA's Global Goodwill Ambassador. It's a great joy in my life. And I'm also here naturally as a member of the global movement of women, of people who are working to craft the world for which the blueprint was made 25 years ago, and for which progress has been painfully and unacceptably slow. For the past few years, we've had a political battleground where the needs of real people have been forgotten as political arguments have spiraled away from the folks that they are meant to serve and been allowed to deteriorate into a deadlock. As you well know, in 1994, your predecessors from 179 governments met in Cairo at the International Conference on Population and Development, and together with partners from civil society, designed the very good ICPD program of action, and it was a paradigm shift for population and development, as the world finally realized that the rights, the autonomous choices, and individual well-being are, in fact, the path to sustainable development. And it was more than that, this ICPD. It was a revolution that placed the future of the world's development firmly in the hands of women and girls, and demanded that we have the right to make decisions over our own bodies, to have our bodily integrity and our sexual autonomy. 25 years of evidence and practice continue to support this consensus and prove that this mission is as vital and critical today as it was 25 years ago. These are the principles at play that I've been able to witness in my 17 years as an active member in the field of women's and girls' reproductive rights and on my missions with UNFPA. I've been to 20 countries around the world, and with UNFPA in particular, I've been to Jordan and eastern Ukraine, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, I have to look at the list, it's getting longer by the year, Kenya and the Democratic Republic, and of course to South Sudan. My friends, in my own words, I want to tell you about some of the girls and women with whom I have spent time and on whose behalf I stand here today. I bring you the love of Tatiana, a young mother in eastern Ukraine who found the strength inside and the tools externally through psychosocial programs UNFPA implemented to leave a husband who was beating her and her children. Tatiana fed me from vegetables that she grew in her garden, putting them into my mouth, loving me with a passion that was so dear and unforgettable. I played with her children in a creek, and we swang on a rope swing and dropped into the creek where they typically take their bath, but for that day it was for fun. And I bring you the sweetness of my adopted Syrian refugee who in the Zatari refugee camp made me comfortable on the ground while they painted me from head to toe in henna tattoos. A 15-year-old who was expecting her second child was the one who painted me. We took refuge and respite from inside the plastic tent where just outside there was chaos. And I bring you the energy and cleverness of Sri Lankan youth who put on a play that showed how to disrupt toxic masculinity and rape culture by giving girls and women the verbal skills and the spunk that they need to ride public transport, for example, without being harassed. We must see and hear the stories of these girls and women and hundreds of millions more like them from your countries and from around the world. And we must think of the promises that we made to them 25 years ago. My message is so simple, and it is neither controversial nor political. Girls and women count. We matter. Our rights are inherent to us and are owed to us. And if we invest in girls and women, all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals will advance rapidly as a result. We brought this idea, this revolution, 25 years ago, and it changed the way that we think about the fundamental, archetypal human force that is behind all development, reproduction. The vision of the ICPD is a world where all citizens are free and equal in dignity and rights, where gender and sex equality, where sexual and reproductive health and rights are recognized as a central pillar for improving society. And yet there are profound and practical barriers that my friends around the world face that prevent them from manifesting their sexual autonomy and bodily integrity and impair their abilities to take decisions that are good for them and for their families. As you well know, we are facing a backlash to so much of what the ICPD stands for, to women's rights, to the rights of marginalized groups around the world, like the young, the elderly who need our care and sustaining attention, to people living with disabilities, rural populations, to the LGBTQI community and migrants and people who are affected by conflict and natural disasters. And when these factors intersect, life is even more dangerous for girls and women. This is a backlash against the vision of inclusive societies on which we agreed 25 years ago. And despite being the building blocks of a sustainable development that will benefit us all, these principles are under threat and are being eroded. I urgently feel this mission. I carry inside of me the visceral reality of the vulnerable, exploited, and traumatized girls and women with whom I have cooked in shelters, danced in UNFPA safe spaces, with whom I have cried and laughed, and of course with whom I have jumped rope in the dirt and shared from the soul. Their ability to be safe and secure in the most basic ways need our urgent attention. And the discussions that we have in this room reach into bedrooms and bathrooms of the most vulnerable people around the world, and our conversations can save lives if we want them to. The world's population is more varied than it has ever been before, and as we heard this morning, some countries are growing rapidly due to high fertility, while others are even shrinking as they face a combination of low fertility, aging, and outflows of young people migrating in search of something just a little bit better than what they've got at home. Some countries are stretching to keep up with large numbers of youth, while others are building systems to support older folks and trying to help people start the families they desire. And as the Secretary General's report states, these complex population dynamics must not be regarded as faceless numerical abstractions. Rather, they are foundational descriptions of real-life human experiences, of people and evidence of the existence or deprivation of their fundamental human rights. The statistics and trends of the world's 7.7 billion people come to life when we understand this really is a tapestry woven from the stories of billions of people who depend on their individual rights to determine if, when, and how many children to have. These are the stories of women in West Africa and teenage moms in South America who can't access contraception and are having more children than they can care for. Or couples in Eastern Europe or East Asia who are facing economic, social, and professional and personal health constraints that prevent them from starting the families they want to have. And of girls in fragile settings who are forced into marriage by parents who feel they have no better option when it comes to trying to guarantee their safety. I remember one of my friends who, when she was home in Syria, was actually in school, but when she got to the refugee camp, her dad held her out of school because he feared for her safety as she was walking around the camp, and he was looking to marry her off. When people are denied their basic right to choose if and when to have children, it makes fertility rates higher or lower than they desire. All of this has huge implications for the future well-being of individuals and families and societies. Like the hundreds of women I see every time I go to the Congo who have scores of children running around, with the young looking after even the younger. Or when I go down to the river to bathe, I see adolescent girls who are already pregnant or whose bellies indicate they are postpartum. Family size and reproductive rights go hand in hand, and they in turn are linked inextricably with other rights, including to and the need for adequate health care, education, and decent work. Where people can exercise their rights, they tend to thrive. And where these rights are stifled, people struggle for adequate nutrition and have tremendous daily troubles just trying to survive, much less to achieve their full potential. Poverty alleviation and social progress is impeded when girls and women can't regulate their fertility, and whole countries lose out as a result. The matters under discussion here are so fundamental that they underpin all elements of a country's society and its economy. Each of the world's 7.7 billion people has a story and a life that our decisions here influence and impact. The story of the ICPD on its 25th birthday is not entirely a story of doom and gloom, and neither is it a story of outright success. Progress since 1994 is evident across many indicators of women's and girls' empowerment. Boys and girls enroll in primary school at equal rates, although girls still experience obstacles when it comes to their time of menstruation, and sexual coercion is still at play with girls in school. We have seen a 40% decline in maternal mortality. And yes, more girls and women can access family planning, such as in DRC, which was recently instrumental in changing the federal laws so that adolescent girls can obtain family planning, and married women no longer need a husband's consent in order to access contraception. We're making progress on fighting workplace inequality, Me Too and Time's Up. We are seeing greater recognition of the scale and impact of gender-based violence, and we're not there yet, but a rising number of women as political leaders. And we're not patting ourselves on the back just yet, because one girl told me that she must give sex in exchange for a good grade is one girl too many. And one woman who dies giving birth is one woman too many. In 2000, we agreed on the Millennium Development Goals, and we committed to reducing maternal mortality by 75%. 5 years after the deadline we set, we have achieved little more than half of that. We committed to attaining universal reproductive health care by 2015, but we still have those 214 million women who cannot access family planning. And yes, people are talking about sex and gender-based violence more than ever before, in part because we are publicizing its pervasive reality across all societies. But women still live with beatings, sometimes from men, sometimes from women and female relatives who are living in patriarchal systems. And today, just today, thousands of girls, their bodies will be ruined and their lives smothered by being forced into marriage. Girls should be students, not wives. And there are still 200 million women alive today living with the physical agony and emotional trauma of female genital mutilation. In South Sudan alone, where I recently visited, 60,000 women are living with obstetric fistula, I was able to attend the second ever fistula repair surgery that took place in South Sudan. It was a wonderful collaboration between UNFPA and the UN peacekeepers. They flew in a doctor from Uganda, and the women there were so delighted at the prospect of not to leak feces and urine anymore. The list of outrageous and painful abuses that relate to our sexual and reproductive health is lengthy and it is varied. And each relates to the lack of bodily integrity and sexual autonomy. Our collective response should be righteous anger and deep motivation. And this is not just a problem that poor countries are facing. I am an American, and everyone knows I'm very open about being a survivor of childhood sexual assault and rape. I was molested for the first time that I remember when I was 7 years old, and the adults around me protected the adult man who violated me. When I told them about what had happened, they said, "Oh, he's a nice old man. That's not what he meant." And I was raped 3 times, and once when I was raped, that rapist would have paternity rights in the 2 states where he and I were residents. And I'm very thankful today that I was able to access a safe and legal abortion to terminate a pregnancy that was a result of rape. We have a long way to go in the United States of America, too. Our work is cut out for us. No one here can feel that their government's job is entirely done, and we know what we have to do. So what is holding us back? Firstly, we know the world is in a difficult place right now. There are more people living in fragile and humanitarian conditions than ever before, including 32 million women and girls of reproductive age in those camps all over the world. The number of displaced persons has increased dramatically in recent years, an estimated 68.5 million in 2018, far exceeding the number of folks who were displaced by the Second World War. Representing the greatest number since the Second World War. From Ukraine to Syria, Myanmar, and South Sudan, I've seen firsthand the challenges that the ravages of war inflict on individuals and family, and how girls and women suffer disproportionately. From being able to avoid being married off to adult men, to regulate their fertility, to antenatal care for their precious newborns, to a skilled midwife to attend to a safe birth in a fragile setting, to their right simply to go about their lives without the ever-present risk of being assaulted, of being raped, harassed, and abused while fetching water, or collecting firewood, or trying to get to school, or to ride on a bus. The women with whom I have sat, they need health care services, sanitary supplies, safe spaces, psychosocial support, and quality, compassionate care when they have faced unthinkable and when they're living with trauma. In addition to the world being in a precarious geopolitical state right now, there are 3 factors for success that are well within our reach. And I hope that you will commit to them as part of your 25th birthday present to the ICPD. First and foremost, we need the money. With more resources from your governments devoted to women and girls, we can accelerate our progress, and we know exactly how much we need. For example, the world is facing a crisis in funding international family planning, which is essential to supporting the rights of girls and women everywhere and to sustain its work and continue to serve growing target populations. UNFPA's family planning program, called UNFPA Supplies, needs an additional $700 million. Fully funded, and these numbers to me are the exciting part of what I have to share with you today. The program could avert 116 million unintended pregnancies and provide savings in the cost of health care for families and nations of $5.5 billion. These are wise and sound investments. And those who think that family planning is an unnecessary expense, UNFPA and our partners have crunched the numbers and seen that for every additional dollar that's invested in contraception, the cost of pregnancy-related care is reduced by $2.20. In terms of socioeconomic benefits, incalculable. Achieving universal access to quality sexual and reproductive health services is estimated to yield $120 for every dollar invested. And then the lives of the girls and women that are ameliorated by these investments. Family plannings also help realize the demographic dividend, the major boost that comes in economic productivity when there are growing numbers of people in the workforce and falling numbers of dependents they have to look after. And so that is message number one. Invest your money in women and girls' rights. And secondly, we need political will. We need backbone and character and integrity. As soon as women's bodies become an ideological battleground, women suffer and we all lose. The political symbolism of the issues at stake, rather than the concrete reality of the lives that are affected, is trumping the rights of women and girls to simple things like family planning that they are actually entitled to by law. And it pains me to see that here at home at the UN, these divisions seem to have encroached in recent years and prevented the UN Commission on Population and Development from finding its natural consensus for the past 3 of the 4 years, of the past 4 years. You know what I mean. You were here. The human rights that we've been celebrating were agreed upon decades ago. Oh, I love it when the lights go down. Except I am 50 and I do need reading glasses or someone's light to be able to see the font, even though it's a large font. We'll just say that that was a little God wink for some reason. We have 25 years of evidence and practice that continue to support the consensus that human rights are not political bargaining chips, and they should not, in fact, be political at all. And thirdly, it's geeky, but we all know it and love it. We need the data. It's difficult to organize your house if the lights aren't on. We've seen this as waves of new data done by smart and thoughtful people on gender-based violence force us to recognize the importance of data. As fertility rates, age structures, and other demographic trends vary drastically both within and between countries, lawmakers need to shine the light upon the people they are serving to know as much about them as possible. The capacity to monitor and project population dynamics must be a core investment for a government so they can plan their responses accordingly. How do you know how many schools to build if you don't know how many children should be going to them? And how can you plan your health services if you don't know the age and needs of your population? And if you want to know your people and love them, count them. So, my friends, the ICPD is indeed a universal agenda. It is relevant in the world's richest and poorest countries, and in the world's stablest and most fragile places. Women and girls have universal rights and needs. It is our moral obligation to uphold and champion them. No country yet has achieved gender and sex equality, yet we've all committed to it. So let us not stand idly by and let the resistance sidetrack us. 25 years ago, the global revolution in reproductive health and rights culminated in the ICPD program of action. We put people first. Millions now do have better lives and can make informed, safe choices about reproductive health. Women like my friend Teresa, who after 10 pregnancies finally has access to a modern family planning method of her choice. But the revolution is incomplete, and until we are finished, it is the most marginalized people who continue to suffer, like my friend Ajida, a Rohingya, who also has had 10 pregnancies. When she was fleeing her country and going to Bangladesh to the camp, 4 of her children drowned, 2 twins and a boy and a girl. And when I met her, she was receiving prenatal care for the first time in her reproductive life. And that was at a UNFPA clinic. We face so many challenges, all of which are very well articulated in the depth and the breadth of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and their 169 targets. Amidst an ever-growing sustainable development agenda, we must remember, recapture, and reaffirm the goals and the values inherent in the ICPD program of action. that we are all better off when every person is healthy, empowered, and counted. Around the world, these values are motivating action by governments, civil society, social movements, and community leaders. So making sure that ICPD, that its vision of the world, the one that your governments generated and committed to, is a fundamental and central part of what we aspire to see and to live in as a collective global community. This is our moment, rights and choices for everyone, without exception. I implore you to reaffirm the ICPD today and to join the UNFPA movement and other movements that support women's and girls' rights on our March to Nairobi, the summit on ICPD 25, from the 12th to the 14th of November 2019. Together with the governments of Kenya and Denmark and the rest of the world's leaders, we will gather to plan our collective way forward to finish the unfinished business and achieve sustainable development by recognizing the rights and choices of all. We will mobilize a global and diverse group of allies representing every country and constituency. We will insist on every action required to advance rights and choices and to realize the world we want, that every vulnerable person deserves. I appreciate your attention today and letting me share with you a little bit about why ICPD has become personally important to me. I love being UNFPA's Global Goodwill Ambassador, and I love the girls and women who've been so good to me, like the Syrian grandmother who actually held me, or the grandmother in South Sudan who said to me when I couldn't offer her a blanket, "It's okay, my child, I see that you care for me, and that is enough." Those women have been able to care for me, and it's my pleasure to stand here before you today and invite you to help care for them by ensuring the bodily integrity and sexual autonomy of girls and women everywhere. Thank you so much for your kind attention.